you salty sailors, time to raise anchor and set sail for your best scrawny life. Arr!
Let's take a break from our serious discussions and talk about what's actually happening in the video this time. These are all techniques that are only marginally could they be considered fly fishing, but they do catch fish, and that of course is the whole point. Here there are fish, especially crappies, patrolling the outside edge, the deep edge of this line of lily pads. The wind is pushing me in such a way that I can paddle down to the end of this little creek arm, and the wind will push me back along the deep edge of that outside weed edge. And I'm simply making a single cast and then just allowing the wind to push me. It's sort of like trolling, wind trolling, I guess you could call it. Just drifting with the wind until a fish picks up the fly, because I'm already in the position where I want the fly to be. It's not a position that I'm casting to. If I were to cast, for one, the wind would ruin the accuracy, and I would wind up tangled in the lily pads most of the time. And just to maintain the boat position, I would have to struggle and make a lot of noise. So why not use the wind to accomplish what would take a lot of effort to accomplish otherwise? Of course, the edge of the weed bed in this case and the direction of the wind have to line up. So that's the difficult part of it, I guess, but it does work. Now, fly fishing would probably be considered a finesse technique in the grand scheme of things, rather than a search technique. It's not all that effective in finding fish. In this case, however, I'm wading a large but quite shallow sand flat. So, although the horizontal distance the fish can spread out in is quite large, the vertical distance, the depth that they can go to, is limited. So it can be effective as a search technique, especially with a large fly like we're using here. And the results speak for themselves. We did find bass patrolling the outer edge of that sand flat. Now, as soon as the shad began spawning, the whole situation changed. This bass was caught in shoreline cover with shad spawning around it. The shad spawn also attracts these little yellow bass to feed on the eggs. Now, I was hoping here at Spring Lake in Savannah, Illinois, to find shad running up into here to spawn, but I didn't. In general, there weren't many bait fish. There didn't seem like there was much for the larger predators to eat. I did draw strikes from at least one bowfin, and I think several bass. I lost those in the weeds. But at the control points, there were some bait fish, and I did find some bowfin there. Watch the fly carefully here. There it's been struck. But the fish did not hook up. And that was a good-sized bowfin. Surprisingly, watch the fly again here. Surprisingly, it did strike again, and we'll maybe talk about that later. Why? Usually, you wouldn't get a second strike from these fish. There, it struck, but sort of half-heartedly. It just took the fly in its mouth and was just sort of moving it around in its mouth, and I didn't get a solid hook set there, of course. Now at that point, I changed flies from the white colored shad imitation with the hook point down to the black one that rides with the hook point up, so I could hook the upper jaw. Because since it was a vertical situation, the more horizontal situation out on the lake would have been better for the fly with the hook point down. But in this case, that hook point up did eventually give me a solid hook set. Now, this bowfin, make no mistake, put up a furious fight. It broke the 8-weight White River Heat fly rod I was using, and that's a well built, sturdy rod. Um, but it didn't seem to put up the absolutely crazy fight that the bowfin are known for. And I think perhaps the lack of food, I didn't realize it until later, the beavers had actually plugged the other end of this channel. So it was trapped in there with only a limited amount of food. It may have been beginning to weaken a little bit. But I mean, still, it still put up a tremendous fight. And I think that probably explains why, to my surprise, I was able to draw 3 strikes from it. Now, of course, this is little more than dabbling, just dabbling the fly in front of the face of a fish. But on the Mississippi River, conditions are quite changeable. They can be tough, and we take our bowfin wherever we find them. You're welcome to come to the Mississippi and show us the way. But what's more likely to happen is that you will gain a newfound respect for these amazing fish, and you will have to admit a few things about yourself and probably change the way you think about the way. Now, right in here somewhere is where the rod broke. I'd pulled in a bunch of line, then I picked up the net in one hand and was reaching way back with the rod to keep the line tight. Uh, I think right there, I'm reaching back. And when he did that jump, because I was reaching so far back, put the rod in quite an angle and snapped it. Still managed the line didn't go slack and the fly did not fall out, and still managed to land him. But again, that was an 8 weight White River Heat. Um, not a wimpy rod by any stretch of the imagination. So, not unusual for bowfin. They are known as tackle busters. See if you'll smile for the camera here. Those teeth shredded the steel leader almost. Uh, Quite powerful jaws. And now, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to present the sole surviving member, the outcast native son, the iconoclast, the anti-hero, the air-breathing, tackle-busting high king of the lowlands, the bowfin. Forget what you've been told. Feast your eyes on a perfect predator. Look at the muscular flank. Look at the tail, the powerful tail. Did I mention the teeth? They are short but strong and recurved and set in a very strong jaw. More like a saw than a knife, really. I could go on and stack superlative upon superlative. They can breathe air. And because they can breathe air, people have mistakenly labeled them as primitive. Now, that's something that you and I cannot do. We cannot breathe both water and air. So if it can do something that I can't do, that isn't primitive. That's remarkable. Why can't we learn to appreciate these things for what they are? It's, why does it have to be? Why do we have to be able to eat it or make some other sort of use out of it to be able to appreciate an animal, a wild animal that has survived in these waters for millennia? Why can't we see how remarkable the creature is for its own sake? We've made so many mistakes in the past and brought in invasive species and created all sorts of havoc in the environment that we need to let go of that mindset and begin appreciating the things that are natural in the environment for what they are. But anyway, enough preaching for this episode. Now, I guess I wouldn't blame the fly fishing purists out there if they turned up their nose at fly fishing for carp on the mudflats. It's only barely what would be considered fly fishing, but they are big fish, and they do take flies, and it does require stealth. These fish are very sensitive to the heavy footstep, even though they can't see you necessarily, because they're surrounded by such a cloud of mud. Uh, they are very sensitive to your footsteps. If the leader touches them, they will spook, and if one spooks, the whole school spooks. So, it does require stealth. It does require accuracy. You see it. I was quite accurate with several casts and still didn't get an eat until I was right on the fish. Uh, and of course, it has to land. If the fly lands too hard, just the plop of it entering the water close to the fish can spook it. So it requires a degree of skill, and of course the fight. Now I've sped this up quite a bit. The fight just went on and on with this fish. Uh, they are big fish that pull like a truck, and that's the reason I'm doing it. Now, having said that, and to the best of my knowledge, as European settlers implemented large-scale farming practices uh, here in the U.S., the waterways became so degraded that the native fish mostly died off, and they imported a species from the old world which they knew could survive in degraded water, which was the common carp. So this is an invasive species. I mean, they compounded, and there's a look at the fly. They're a black leech pattern with yellow eyes. But they compounded one foolish mistake with another. You know, they added they added one silly mistake on top of another one. So this fish was returned to the water dead, so that turtles and catfish and so forth could make use of it, and in a small way return some of that invasive biomass back into native biomass. Now this is White Breast Creek, a creek arm of Lake Red Rock, and where I filmed that gar spawn video last year. But this year the water level is so low, even lower than last year, and I wasn't able to follow the gar spawn. There were some carp feeding right at the edge of the trail, and I just couldn't help myself. Although this again, you wouldn't call this really fly fishing, and because they were at such close range, the line to leader knot was inside the guides. So when I set the hook on a hard charging carp, it jammed and broke that rod, which was a White River Bighorn. Now, of course, a 5-weight. Of course, that rod is not designed to fight such large fish. And you know, it's marketed as ultra high modulus. The ratio of graphite to resin is quite high, and the wall thickness is very thin. It's very light. It's marketed as one of the light and sensitive and so forth rods. Of course, the manufacturer sells more rods if they break more often. But anyway, that was the end of that one. Well, like I said, I just can't help myself when I see big fish feeding. This fish was also returned to the water dead. Turtles and gar, which gar are native fish to the U.S., will make use of it. Now, on the lake itself, the shad were spawning, and I went down to a popular spot sort of near the Roberts Creek spillway and netted a few and cast out. This is switching to a spinning rod now. I wasn't that clear up and down this shoreline for miles. There were just thousands of shad spawning. Generally, they will run up the river a ways, but with the water level this low, they were spawning right in the middle of the lake, and this huge drum hit. I mean, the small one, quote unquote, is still a decent size, better than average drum, but that huge one is just colossal. So a little bull snake was in the trail too.